Hello everyone, welcome back to another video, and today we won't be discussing any traps because honestly even I'm kind of fed up with it. So today we're going to be looking at the second opening video that I'll be uploading, and it's not like those unorthodox openings like Bird. We'll be discussing the French defense and obviously how you should tackle it as white. And as you all know, French defense goes like e4, e6, d4, d5. Now again, if you're white, you'll be familiar with the line e5, and that's what even black is familiar with. But there's also another variation where white goes knight to f3 here. But again, it's all these modern variations which I don't really suggest. I suggest stick to the theoretical lines and the lines which are, well played. Otherwise, you might fall for some tricks. So anyway, it goes d4, d5, and here white has three options, I think three main options, no, four. So he has the advanced variation, as I had earlier said, which goes with pawn to e5, or he can take the pawn on d5, which is known as the exchange variation, or he can go with knight to d2, which is Tarash, or he can go with knight to c3, which is well, it depends on what black plays. Well, it's known as the Winower, and that is exactly what we will be discussing today. Now, when black plays knight to c3, when white plays knight to c3, black has two options. Black can either go knight f6, which is a line which I'll be discussing a little later in the next video, or black can go bishop to b4, which is the Winower. So, what do we do here? The move here to play is pawn to e5, and it's a very straightforward move. Black's looking to capitalize on the pawn on e4, and you restrict that from happening. Well, what does black do? Well, he applies pressure to the center since he knows you have a knight on c3, so he really can't, white can't protect the d4 pawn with c3. So he makes sure that, the pressure stays on white. And here you play the move a3, and it leads to black actually having three options on the spot. A, he can go back bishop to a5. B, he can take c takes d4. Or C, he can go bishop takes c3, which is the main line. And it's also the most commonly played. So if you see someone playing bishop a5, he probably doesn't know theory that well. And I'll tell you exactly what to do if he plays bishop to a5. Well, firstly, you play the move pawn to b4, and you might think it's sacrificing a pawn, but it comes with great compensation. So after c takes b4, instead of taking with your a pawn, you play the move knight to b5. And what this does is it aims at the d6 square, and you're aiming for a check. So what happens if black plays b takes a3? Well, a simple move like c3 stops black's plans, and now you're aiming for knight takes d6, so he has to go back bishop to c7, and here you play bishop takes a3. And now you realize, okay, you have 6 pawns and he has 7, but look at your compensation. You have a whole diagonal to yourself. You have knight to d6 coming up next, and you have your queen that can go to g4 and on g7 at any time. So you're completely loaded on offense. So black will try to avoid this line, and he won't take bishop takes a3. He'll probably play something like knight to c6. You take a takes b4. After bishop takes b4, c3, bishop to e7, you play bishop to a3. Eventually play something like knight to h6, bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, and knight to d6 check, king to f8. And now you realize that, okay, you're a pawn down, but you both have your queens on the board yet, and his king is quite misplaced. I mean, it's on f8. He hasn't castled. You have a dangerous knight on d6, which cannot be removed unless black loses a lot of tempos. So you have to capitalize on that situation. And one thing I'd like all of you to know, whoever's watching, is that in this opening you have to take risks. I mean, if you don't take risks, you shouldn't be playing this opening. If you're that passive player, I highly recommend don't play this opening. It'll completely screw up your position, because if you're not the person who takes risks, I don't think this opening's for you. If you don't like to play dynamically, then I don't think Winower is such a good idea. But anyways, if you're worried about this situation, not many people play this, so you don't have to be. Well, the main move is bishop takes e3. After b takes e3, the main move is knight to e7, and here you start with your attack, queen to g4. Well, the main line is queen to c7, but the most commonly played move is castles. So we'll be looking at both of them right now. So queen to c7. You have to follow, when black plays queen to c7, guys, you have to be careful. You have to follow exactly what I say right now, because this is completely theory. If you play something different, you might lose. So after rook to g8, which is again forced, queen takes f7. After c takes d4, you don't play anything like bishop to d2 or c takes d4, because those all are very bad moves. The move you have to play is knight to e2, and that is the main line. Again, he will probably play knight to c6 to attack your e5 pawn. In this case, you push f4. After something like bishop to d7, you play something like queen to d3, and you basically retreat. D takes e3, knight takes e3, a6 to avoid knight to b5. You play something like rook b1. After knight a5, which is trying to open this file for the rook, you play the move h4. Now it has two meanings. Once black plays rook c8, you play the move rook h3, and it is supporting the knight, but one thing also it's doing is getting your rook into action. And the move h4 actually helps you advance this pawn since you have an advanced passed pawn, and you're going to be a pawn up as well. As you see, black has 5 pawns, you have 6 pawns. But what is in it for black is he tries to exploit the king's unsafe position and the openness of the center. So that is black's point of counterplay. So you have to be careful you don't get checkmated in the middle of the board. That's the only thing. Otherwise, if you exchange queens and you get it to the end game, then I don't see how you're going to lose with this passed pawn on h4. So that was the queen c7 line. Now, if black decides to go castles, here you actually have a choice. What do you want to do? The first move is bishop to d3, and you realize black doesn't have a lot of defenders for this dangerous double bishop. I mean, all his pieces are kind of scattered. I mean, he hasn't even developed most of his pieces, so he has to start developing eventually. And here I suggest the move knight to f3, although many people play queen to h5, sorry, not h4. And here the move black plays is f5, and after takes, bishop to g5, rook to f7, you have a comfortable position with all your pieces developed, your queen on the king side x-raying g-file. You can either castle kingside or queenside. According to me, I don't think queenside's even a problem, although you have to always look for queen to a5. So I do suggest going kingside castling. That would be the suggested move. You can just castle, or the move here is actually bishop to e7, but again, it's your choice. I mean, it's your game. So anyways, that's where I white has a plus advantage over here, because all his pieces are participating in some type of development. So anyways, guys, that was the bishop b4 line, and I will be posting the knight f6 line in the next video, so make sure you look that one up as well. Thanks for watching again, and I'll see you all in the next one.